This video was made for educational purposes only. This is your world with you. Enjoy watching. First, we need to figure out whether or not a bomb explosion with a force of 15 tons TNT, and that's exactly how much was hidden in the little boy, dropped on Hiroshima would be just as devastating to New York City. To do that, we have to reconstruct the events of August 6th. Several warplanes took to the skies over a peaceful Japanese city. It should be noted, however, that except for Colonel Tibbets, the crew had not the slightest idea. Had no idea what kind of bomb they were carrying. At 8 AM local time, there was over Hiroshima. Above Hiroshima in the first nanosecond, a fireball appeared at ground zero and grew to 100 feet in diameter, its temperature reaching 300,000 degrees Celsius. The ground began to glow. The flight crew who hurriedly left the area later recalled that everything around them sparkled with a blue light and that they had a strange metallic taste in their mouths. 80,000 people died instantly. They were literally wiped off the face of the earth. But I'll come back to that a little later. So, if such a bomb were to hit, for example, modern New York City, the consequences would have been just as devastating. Unfortunately, it probably would. Even worse, since Japan is an island nation, which means that the blast wave would not be able to spread further the mainland, where earthquakes are more likely to occur. Earthquakes have made a difference to the Japanese, which has actually helped them in many ways. The buildings in Hiroshima were made of rice paper and lightweight materials, so that people weren't buried alive under heavy concrete. Meanwhile, the architectural wonders of New York City could play a cruel trick. What will happen to New York City's buildings if someone suddenly dropped an atomic bomb on them? If a 15 kiloton bomb hits Times Square within the first nanosecond, it would produce a massive fireball with a temperature several hundred times hotter than the sun. The flash of light will blind everyone within a 20-kilometer radius. As far away as Queens and the village of Newark, it would take just 4 seconds after the explosion to turn Rockefeller Center into a horrific mess of concrete, steel and unfortunate victims who chose the worst possible time to walk out onto New York's famous skyscrapers, which themselves would become a single deadly weapon. The blast wave will shatter all the glass surfaces into millions of shards, and they will move with a tremendous velocity, continuing to crumble and gnaw into anything they need along the way. The shockwave will cover an area nearly 70 square kilometers. It will shatter windows in every building up to and including the American Museum of Natural History. And it won't miss the Statue of Liberty. The chances of survival will be much lower, given the cell phone and computer failures, and the electromagnetic pulse caused of a nuclear explosion would take out all the gadgets. But that damage will be the least of it all, and the worst impact would be caused by something we can't even see. Radiation. But how exactly will it affect people? The tragedy of Hiroshima revealed to humanity one of the most terrible phenomena of our time. The nuclear shadows are living monuments are the only human remains that who happened to be near the center in the first seconds after the bomb goes off. Of the detonation, the amount of energy released is so enormous that it takes only an instant to vaporize a human body and leave not only remains forever scorched in asphalt or concrete. Similar silhouettes can still be found on the streets of Hiroshima. And even such death is not the most painful, because one disappears faster than one has time. A terrible fate awaits those who will be 3 to 6 years old. Those who will be between 3 and 6 kilometers from ground zero, because the greatest danger of nuclear weapons is not destructive, but radiation sickness, which affects all living things around within 1 hour after detonation. The radioactive plume will cover an area of 50 square kilometers, People will be strongly advised to leave the area within a radius of 75 kilometers from the center of the explosion for several years. Should the atomic bomb suddenly explodes over downtown New York City, 250,000 people would die immediately. But about 300,000 more would suffer from radiation over the next few months. But let's not forget that the tragedy in Hiroshima happened almost 80 years ago. So perhaps people now have the knowledge that can help reduce the effects of a nuclear explosion. US Interagency Modeling Center and Atmospheric Assessment Center is developing rescue plans for various emergencies, including a nuclear attack. If disaster strikes, the organization will immediately begin tracking the radioactive plume and send all its predictions to the federal authorities. Then that data will be used to initiate emergency evacuations in many major cities, especially those located in seismic zones. There are predetermined evacuation plans and underground emergency and bomb shelters. Although of the 18,000 bunkers once built in New York City, more than half of them are now operating as bars and restaurants, so these places would be useless. Unfortunately, once the bomb goes off, most citizens won't be able to protect themselves anyway. One would have to be lucky to survive nearby. For example, as Onomura was just a few meters away from the site where the bomb fell, and the tragedy of Hiroshima, he survived because he decided to go down to the basement to get some important documents. It seems that in recent decades, many countries have succeeded in creating this new age weapon. But this is perplexing, because simple logic dictates that if you can shoot then you can be shot. I use New York City as an example to show you what might happen to a modern city if a 15-ton atomic bomb. But the arsenals of some major countries include nuclear missiles with a yield of 300 kilotons of TNT, which is 20 times more powerful. More powerful than the little boy dropped on Hiroshima. Hopefully we will never have to find out what happens after such an explosion.